Hello, I'm Reverend Ed Gomez, Vicar of San Pablo St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Houston. It is a pleasure to be with you today here for this gathering. For the past several decades, we know that we have been in decline. All mainline churches and the Episcopal Church has been in decline. With a pandemic that launched in 2020, we know also that this decline and lack of participation has accelerated. Many are using terms like financial cliffs, whether they're dioceses or congregations that were previously quite sustainable, although decreasing in some form or another. All these thoughts are very real. And I think that we're realizing that unless we do something different, something radically different, this trend will continue. In this presentation, I wish to offer you some ideas that will spark your interest in envisioning a new way of doing and being church. You may not agree with some of the strategies, and that's okay. There is no one single silver bullet that will solve our problems. We must do it all and in different ways and adapt to each and individual situation as is needed and as called for. I am a board member of TENS, the Episcopal Network on Stewardship. And what we do and what I think we do well with our executive director at the lead is we offer users resources and strategies and techniques to maximize the giving potential of your congregation. It's not tricking them into giving more, but rather awakening them to that fact that part of our rule of life is generosity, is living into the abundance that God shares so graciously with us. It is a rule of life, a spiritual discipline, like prayer. We are most godlike when we live in abundance and unbridled generosity. It is an outpouring of love. And Greg Boyle's words in his new book, The Whole Language, he calls it the power of extravagant tenderness, truly loving unconditionally. This piece of the element is focused on our members, on our congregation, on somewhat familiar and traditional stewardship campaigns or capital campaigns that just teach us how to remind individuals and how to really pray about their giving and their support of the church and its ministry to continue to evangelize not just this generation, but generations to come. The spark that I want to ignite in you today calls you to explore going outside of your episcopal walls and venture out into the world, engaging communities. And that's part of the title of this presentation. This is far more than knowing your neighbor or knocking on their door and inviting them to church. We all have done that, know that, and it is time to move on, that really does not work any more than getting a short-term walk around the neighborhood with flyers. Engaging community, to engage and fully engage, is being part of the community, of neighbors, elected officials, county, city, and federal government, and establish those relationships. Be known and let yourself and your congregation know that we as a church are here. Some people have asked the question, why are we here and why should anyone care? And the world asks that and seeks us for those answers. What is our role? What is our ecclesiology, if you will? But then the next big step is working with these sectors to advance the commonwealth of God, becoming involved in a movement of growth in Christ by practicing love. What do I mean? Let me say it this way. About 2,000 years of church history have been telling people about Jesus. The pygmies know Jesus. Missionaries have gone to the remote areas of the Hindu Kush, and they have heard about Jesus. Don't you think that it's about time that we started to follow Jesus? After all, that is what he invited us to do. He didn't say, go out into the world and create more God-fearing Episcopalians. No, he said, take up your cross and follow me. After all, is not that really what he asked us to do? Let me tell you what we did here at San Pablo St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Houston. As you look at the slide here, what is our mission field? We are a church that in a city that leads the nation in homicides. We looked at our assets and what are our assets and what do we have to work with. First of all, we have people in our congregation, and we have this beautiful campus right on the main drag on Park Place Boulevard. And then we saw what are the needs. We found what are the gaps, what are the low-hanging fruit, the relationships that we already have fostered one way or another. When this church was forming in 1911, it first started meeting at a local elementary school called Park Place Elementary. And that place, we still have a relationship with today. Of course, the neighborhood has changed and houses have come and gone. And this neighborhood has moved from a middle-class, working-class neighborhood, mostly oil and gas, to a community that is impoverished. Out of the 5 precincts that comprise Harris County, we are the lowest under-resourced community. It has the lowest ownership of housing. It has the lowest education. It has the highest diabetes. It has crime rate that is higher. It has the second highest concentration of homeless and the second highest concentration of sex workers. So how can we transform from a mainly and a Sunday event-centered organization to an entity that is known and operates and has an impact 7 days, offering a labor of love to this community? How can we be part of the community? How can we be part of this world and be trusted and have a vested interest? Well, we asked, what is needed and what can we fill? So in 2016, we founded a nonprofit organization called the Texas Center for Human Advancement. Right now, we are rebranding into the AHA movement. But we saw that the local school cut their fine arts program, severely cut other resources. There was no education for physical education. And all these children living in this mostly apartment buildings in very poor conditions had no access to nature experience, to the fine arts, going to a summer camp. And so we found a way to meet the need. And whenever you do something for other, believe me, good people always come out. It is remarkable how this had happened. We exposed them to things that not only resource children experience, but the kids from homes of domestic violence, those that are living in the domestic violence shelter, required a mental health component, a professional to intervene whenever an episode occurred during one of our field trips. So we developed a program that created a spark of curiosity that gave a vision to these children that only knew their environment. And that is when we began to heal a broken community, to see joy, the joy that only children can project, and to lose their fear of their environment. Wait, what, you may ask? But we're a church. We do religious stuff. We have communion, we have bread and wine, we have a narthex, we have Bible study, we have Daughters of the King, we have all these sorts of ministry, readers, ushers, the choir. And that is what I am suggesting, that we shift our focus to what most of our church's culture and the centrality of the religious service outward, to the outreach, to ministry like, to the regular, instead of the regular outreach ministry like Loose Change Sunday, the third Sunday bringing in a can or a bag of non-perishable food items, or going to later loaves and fishes, coat drive for the winter, for the homeless, and the things that we do on the side. We're pretty good at gathering for disasters like floods, hurricanes. Here in Houston, when we got hit by Harvey in August of 2017, there was unbridled generosity. We had people coming out from every corner, making an effort. And we as an Episcopal Church do well. But I invite you to consider that God loves us during the good times and during the disasters, during the difficult times and during the non-difficult times when things and life just seems to go on. So too must we continually show the love of God that God shows to us. And what I'm really suggesting is that you let the tail wag the dog. When you love like that, the money will come. Let me share what happened to you with us. We had to close on the second Sunday around March 15th of 2020 during the pandemic. That Sunday, people were calling me, people were talking, what's happening? We've never not had church. We gathered within the following week as best we could, being careful, or through phones and emails. We hadn't yet discovered Zoom, to find out what was God calling us to in this moment. By the first week of April, we established a relationship with the Houston Food Bank. We opened a drive and a food distribution coming out where people opened their trunks, started putting in. On week 1, we had about 80 cars come in and about 10 to 12 volunteers showed up. By week 4, my friends, we had over 450 cars drive through, representing over 4,000 unique individuals. And over 40 volunteers consistently showed up, not just for 1 week or 2, but for months. For months during rain, during the heat of Houston, and during cooler and cold weather. Those volunteers, mostly millennials, but also retirees, older folks, people from all walks of life. Our youth group entirely, we had the best youth group attendance ever. We had 25 youth come in to take over one of those Wednesdays on which we had the food distribution to help out. One woman started a GoFundMe page and 3 weeks later sent us $2,800 to continue to keep going and added some of the staple food items that we really needed. A donor bought pallets of rice and beans and tortillas, which is staple for this Latino Hispanic community, to give out as staple food items for this community to add to the milk and proteins that were given out through the Houston Food Bank. The energy, folks, was incredible. Everyone was hands-on. Everyone was laughing. Everyone was having a great time. We developed the program. Some of the young folks were saying, listen, some people are shut-ins. We're getting calls. We're getting the news media. Everyone started showing up, and we started to really feel and be like church. People were responding, saying amen. People from all walks of life were coming and participating, from wealthy churches, from poor churches, from mission churches, from non-denominational churches, and from no churches. And we started a program to take boxes of food to seniors. One senior member of this community told me that in the 99-year history of St. Paul's Church, no single year have had received more funds than 2020 and 2021. None of it was to be given for bread and wine or for new robes for the acolytes or for repairs to the church, much needed in this old building. It was all about sharing the abundance. It was about being generous as God continuously is generous to us season after season. It was ridiculously generous. It was extravagant. And now it's about shifting from knowing Jesus to being Jesus. As Richard Rohr would say, following Merton's contemplative in a world of action, we move from contemplation into action. The week after Christmas, I took a week off and we left to go to New Mexico. And we were going to the White Sands National Monument. On the way there, outside of Alamogordo, I saw a sign that caught my eye. I was driving, I couldn't take out my camera fast enough to take a photo of it. It was some non-denominational church that had a big billboard. And it read, "We're about relationship, not religion." And I got to tell you, it stung me. Because in my ministry, I've been a clergy for 32 years. It's all about religion. That's what I know. That's what I am. That's what I do. It's my identity. But really, I started reflecting on those white sands. I started really, and that phrase stayed with me. And it is so very true. Jesus was about relationship, not about religion. He did not found a denomination. And from this billboard, we are about relationship, not religion. It caught my eye because what people are looking for is and need is a relationship with others. We are so isolated, and we saw that in the pandemic, but they're not looking for religion because they're not coming. Every other single sector of society has evolved. Even McDonald's is serving salads. Who would have thought McDonald's years ago started serving salad when a more healthy consciousness society was being formed? And they moved in that direction, but we haven't. People are searching for an awakening. People are searching to be Jesus in the world. And when we love, they know God has not abandoned them. 3 months ago or so, an older woman knocks on my door, and my admin had gone home for the day. And so I answer, and I said the usual, "Hi, how are you? How can I help you today? What do you need?" And the woman just looked at me almost a little nervous, perhaps apprehensive, and said, "I heard that this is the place where people get help." And after I dealt with her and she told me her trailer during the last February's freeze was damaged, and see how we were able to help her with those trailer repairs with the help of our diocese and other resources, that phrase stayed with me as well. I want to be known, and this campus, this church that's going to be 100 years in 2023, what a great thing to be known for, as a place that helps people. Did not people go to Jesus to be healed, to be comforted? Did not Jairus go to Jesus? Did not the blind man Bartimaeus go to him? Of course. We all know that. We've read it. But when are we Jesus to others? Can you imagine a church campus that has a federally qualified health center on campus, a HUD-funded child daycare for families or single moms so they can go to school and move themselves out of poverty, or help them work while their child is being cared for in development in an early development child center? Or can you imagine a senior center where our seniors are not in prison or punished for just getting old and not being able to get around? I am also part of a nonprofit affordable housing organization, Christian Church Homes, that was founded by the Disciples of Christ some 55, 56 years ago. And what they are doing is they're taking churches that have literally died and are transforming them into affordable housing for seniors and homeless. We have one here in Houston, Woodland Christian Towers, that was totally renewed and totally redone with a nonprofit organization, a denomination, the city of Houston, and Harris County funds, all working to create a home, a place for seniors. So, my friends, as we moved in engaging communities, I assure you that the money will come. 3 years ago, we opened our door to a nonprofit organization, Crossroads, that had started here about 20 years before that. And they moved to a larger location, and they were thrown out of their church where they were operating out of because that pastor decided that they weren't creating disciples. So I had an opportunity to welcome them back. We had some NIMBY folks telling us, not in my backyard, those homeless are going to bring down the property value. They're going to pollute the neighborhood. They're going to do all sorts of criminal acts. None of that has happened in 3 years. On the contrary, some of them have become members. Some will be getting confirmed this April when our bishop comes to visit us. But what is important for now from a financial perspective is that Crossroads pays us rent. They raise money and they're getting money to feed people, but they're a nonprofit and they have funds from foundations, from local government agencies that support them. Also, we have a health ministry that also provides health, dance, and nutrition, praising God with body and mind and spirit. And also, they pay us rent. That is how we have been able to be sustainable during these 2 years where this economy has tanked, especially in this area, where our churches are languishing and are wondering what they will do facing these financial cliffs. All this sustains a mission. All this supports people coming to church. In the history of the last 10 years of this church, as I looked at the records, about 20 to 25 average was the number of baptized every year. Consistently 19, 20, up to 25, more or less. This last year, after we began the after-school children's program in arts, drama, and music, and we had the daycare, we sent 50 kids to Camp Allen. We had 50 baptisms here in this church, double what it was last time. Do they come to church back? Not always. But they know that this is a place where God works. This is a place where love happens. This is a place where people get help. And I think when we go to God, when we need help, we know and we trust in faith that God will help us. So you may ask, well, that's not the church that I grew up in. And what is the church? And some have asked that question that I mentioned earlier. Why are we here and why should anyone care? What is our impact in the world? What is our purpose? What is our ecclesiology? I can only tell you what church meant to me and why I do this. In this slide, you'll see these people. And yep, those are my parents and that's me. That photo was taken about 6 weeks before my dad died, Mario. And that's my mom. And the clergy person on the photo was our home pastor, Javier Morras. He was a Spaniard. My dad died from a massive heart attack. He dropped dead on the street. He was working on Sunday. It was Father's Day, June 15th, 1958. I was 18 months old. And that priest there decided to show love in an unbridled and an extravagant way. When the news came, he took my mom and my sister, because my mom did not speak English, to the morgue to identify the body. He helped us make the funeral arrangements. My mom had never written a check, and so he helped her navigate all the finances and everything, never for once taking a penny, asking for collections. There were 6 of us, 6 kids, a widow, living alone in a foreign country who did not speak the language. Immediately between my home parish and another church where we had also gone for years. Right away, they hired my sisters to work in the rectory, to help in the parish as assistants, to do jobs. The priest, Javier Morraz, one of the members of the congregation, owned the theater downtown, the Olympia Theater in Miami, downtown Miami. And my 11-year-old brother got a Sunday job after church for the matinees, and then he would drive him home before the evening, just to give him a little something to help the family out. You know what? Those clergy, those congregations never asked, hey, was this in the budget? We did not strategically propose this budget. This is out of our scope. No one said that. They worked on faith-based budgets, and they loved, and they showed charity first. If we do that, if we begin to be Jesus, to follow Jesus, to be prophetic in our preaching and in our actions, we too will find that people will support us like they supported this congregation, this community really. They didn't buy bread and wine for the altar. It all went to feed. But isn't that what Jesus did in the feeding of the 5,000? He fed them, and there was plenty left over. And I think we as church leaders will need to really explore and dig deep in our hearts and in our minds to hear all voices. The NFL has on the back of their helmets, end racism, peace to all. They're having all these messages. They are bearing witness in the world. It's not their job. They're not a religious organization. That's outside of the scope of a professional sports arena or ambience. But yet, we are all called to evangelize. By our baptismal pact, we are all participants in building the kingdom and the commonwealth of God. So I know this is maybe not what you wanted to hear, but if you want to be a difference in the world, and you want this church and the best of our traditions to continue, it's not going to be funded through just alone traditional tithing, through the obligatory October or near end of year campaign, or letters sent at the end of the year like we always do. All that is important. All that is participatory. The religious services and the processions are beautiful and are a celebration of the way we love during the 6 other days of the week. So I invite you, and I thank you for this time, and I invite you again to consider following Jesus in this way, to love when it doesn't make sense to, because I think that is really how God sees us. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.